let's go and talk about this 4 team, the Packers, because the Packers, you know, we'll call it like I see it. They're not a good team this year.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they make the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Having said that, they won. It's like no matter what, Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Jones will always be on their money against the Cowboys because that just seems to be y'all's problem
And that's just one of the things.
every
Is
year.
like every team will show their best against Dallas. That's like the worst issue with Dallas. Is like we're always going to be under the most scrutiny, the most pressure to like win games. That's just how it is when you have the label of America's team. You know, either people love to see you fall and they love to see you and they hate to see you win sometimes. So like
Yeah.
games like this was just like the perfect game. You know, everything was stacking up in Green Bay's favor in terms of like story. It was the backs against the wall. You're on a 5-game losing streak, but you're back at home. You're playing your bread and butter Dallas Cowboys that you can always seem to sneak a win off of. You know,
Yep.
it was the perfect storm for them. You know, and we just came off a bye week.
All you had to do was slay the dragon, Tony.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you had to do.
And another thing was, I think the biggest issue was, it really was. I'm not putting too much blame on Dak on this game. I know those 2 interceptions were key. Well, no, they weren't even key. They were like bad, but they were in the first half.
And one was on.
One was on CD.
One
One was on
CD.
Schultz.
Yeah, one was
they were
on,
both on the players.
One was on CD. That option route, you just got to recognize the coverage, and you got to sit and be patient. If you see the soft spot, you got to sit.
Mm-hmm.
He ran up. Dak obviously, no communication, but that was on CD. That second pick was, yeah.
And then
I look at the defense, man. I think the Packers figured out how to expose the Cowboy defense.
exactly, and
I think they figured it out.
And that's why, if I'm not mistaken, Tack McKinley was looking at. Didn't we sign Tack McKinley?
Yeah.
See, I think
Notice I wasn't a very enthusiastic. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just I think it's much needed depth.
Yeah.
But it's also like I said, Quinn knows what he's doing. I'm gonna trust him with the defense, but I think the biggest issue was Dallas not having a consistent run game. And Makai and I talked about this. Pollard is not. I'm telling you right now, Pollard is not RB1. I'm sorry to tell y'all this. He proved it last week, and I know y'all loved what you saw from the Bears, but like we just said, the Bears are still figuring things out. They're not there yet.
It's a good defense at Green Bay.
Mm-hmm. And Pollard is not an every down back. He proved it. Like Zeke, you need Zeke on those first down carries. You need him on those second down carries. When it's tough sledding on those 4th and shorts, you want Zeke to like keep that defense. Not even like they're not going to blitz for Zeke. They're not like, not every team is going to like key in on Zeke on those 4th and shorts, but they're going to keep him honest. They're going to be like, they still are going to account for Zeke. So like it gives Dallas that option to be like, oh, they look like they're going to lead up. We can just play power run right up the gut, you know?
And I think to me the biggest thing with the Packers was that you have 2 good backs, obviously, in Dillon and Jones, and the Cowboys. We've talked about on this very show before. The lack of depth along the defensive line is there. And, with the ends, Lawrence isn't the guy he once was. Sam Williams is young, but he's a better pass rusher than a run stuffer.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you saw them not set the edge well enough. And not to mention, with no real big, beefy interior guy to take up those double teams and at least get in the way of the holes.
Mm-hmm.
That allowed Jones and Dillon to kind of run all over, and then the play action is there. And I think you all owe Anthony Brown an apology.
Oh, no, I still think he was the one that let the big touch on the first one.
Yeah,
what's his name?
But then Watson.
Watson, yeah.
But then they absolutely picked on everybody else after that.
I think Kelvin Joseph is not a corner.
Should have gone.
He's a special teams guy.
Should have gone to jail.
But just
kidding. But
I think another a great point to your 2 running back system in Green Bay is that they always had a fresh running back. They had an AJ Dillon fresh or an Aaron Jones fresh. And that's how it usually is in Dallas. And when you see that in Dallas with a fresh Zeke and a fresh Pollard, you get big plays from Pollard. You get nice runs from Zeke.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that. We don't have that luxury right now. And
and I kind of think it's almost like mirroring the same problems Dallas had last year in the sense that when Zeke got hurt and banged up, you couldn't run the ball as effectively, which then put the pressure on Dak. And I like Dak, don't get me wrong, but the record, it is what it is. And since 2019, he's 4-9 against winning teams. Now, obviously, those could be circumstantial because the team might not be good enough or whatever, but, as Parcells once said, you are what your record says you are. So with Dak and the play calling, I just don't trust that going forward, especially if Zeke is going to play. If he's going to play banged up, then it's the same thing as last year.
Well, my thing is that, like I
But
said,
minus, you don't have Amari Cooper now.
Mhm.
You don't have a reliable number 2 because Gallup is coming off the ACL and he's been sluggish. I think the Cowboys took a risk in Jalen Tolbert and expected him to be ready week 1. Hasn't made an impact since. And Noah Brown, you can't constantly count on Noah Brown week in, week out to be your second best receiver.
Right.
So now you have, it's the same offense from a year ago, but minus Amari Cooper. And I think that's why I think the Cowboys need to pull the trigger and get OBJ right now.
I'd love to get OBJ too.
That's
I
what they
agree
need
with
to
that.
do.
But I think I would pull back on criticism from Dak just solely
Okay.
because, like, this is my thing. The second half,
Okay.
he didn't really make any mistakes. He was doing the right things. I'm sorry that offense was crap because the offensive identity is run first, then we can set up that pass, our passes, and they just weren't. And I think a great example of like Dak playing good, but like having mistakes and getting heavily scrutinized over other quarterbacks is Josh Allen. Nobody's calling Josh Allen and saying the same thing about Josh Allen. He threw 2 interceptions in the second half
But the problem
to the
with,
same aging cornerback, Patrick Peterson.
hey, we don't slander Pat Pete.
I'm not.
But,
I'm saying
but-
he's an old corner.
but-
We didn't expect this out of Patrick
But
Peterson.
I'll say this to counter that, and I think it's because obviously I think Josh Allen, we all know he's a top 3, top 2 quarterback. Dak, I mean, like I told you this before, I think the ceiling with Dak Prescott is he's a top 10 to 12 quarterback in the NFL, and I don't think Dak will ever be good enough to get you to a Super Bowl.
I'm just saying for this week,
Josh Allen has proven he can get away with those kind of plays.
right? But I'm saying
Oh, we got a comment?
Sergio asks, they signed Antonio Callaway. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's just depth. I don't think it's anything spectacular or bad.
They're just trying things out because obviously with CeeDee Lamb has proven he can be a 1. But obviously Gallup's coming off the ACL and isn't quite there. Tolbert's been kind of a real big disappointment for that team. You don't have a reliable number 2 threat, whether it's the receivers, the tight ends, the running backs. So I just think Callaway coming out of Florida was the real speedster kind of guy, real deep threat. He's cool, but he fills it out. He fizzled out in Cleveland due to some off the field problems. And again, I think the move has to be go sign Odell Beckham no matter what. If you want to compete, you got to sign Odell. Because I don't think we saw this last year when Zeke was hurt, they couldn't run the ball effectively. You put the pressure on Dak and these receivers, they couldn't get it done. Right? It's the same problem this year, but now take away Amari Cooper and you don't have a number 2 receiver. That's what it is. So
But I
Callaway is cool, but
I think about the beauty in this year is that they have now took the time to sit Zeke out a couple weeks now.
that might help.
They're
Yeah.
taking the time, like whereas last year Zeke played injured.
Yeah.
And that was what cost him.
But
So now they're taking their time with this.
But last year with the PCL, no matter what, Zeke was playing through pain no matter what. So now I just wonder if the time off helps him or not. Like, you get what I'm saying? Like, is he going to play hurt still regardless?
I think it's gonna be you're getting like they're
Yeah.
2 weeks now. I think is a big deal because like
Yeah.
I feel like it's like known that Zeke is kind of like the like a warrior in that sense. He will
Yeah.
play through injury and he doesn't miss time. He's kind of like one of those more like reliable players on our team.
For sure.
So them taking their time with him coming back from injury is very telling. They're saying like we want him back at full capacity. We can't afford to have like what we had last year. I think that's what they're looking at. So I think that's going to be the difference between last year's that they're taking time now. They rather lose a game against Green Bay, and to like win games further down the line and get us into the playoffs with a healthy Zeke,
Yeah, and I think one word, Sergio, to sum up that question about Callaway, I think the word would be desperation, because that's a guy who was a former top. He was a high prospect coming out of Florida. Had potential. It kind of didn't work out in Cleveland, and then in was it Miami? I want to say it was the Dolphins. So I think it's just a desperate move to see if you can get anything out of a former top pick. I mean, and that happens all the time in the NFL. There are always guys taking chances. I mean, the Chiefs, Kadarius Toney. The Chiefs last year when they signed or they traded for DeAndre Baker, the Giants corner who got released last year. So it's teams do it all the time. So I just think that there's nothing I really expect out of it.
And especially because it makes me question the James Robinson move now, because I feel like that's another player that we
Washington?
forget- Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because we don't I still haven't heard much about him coming back or when that's gonna happen. And I think it may be telling on that situation, if
Yeah.
anything. Like that means we might not see him for the rest of the season, or
Just go get OBJ and solve all your problems.
I agree.
That's the pit. That I think.
But after this week against Buffalo, like with Buffalo losing and Dallas losing, it does make his negotiations harder for those teams, because they did have the upper hand.
they didn't need OBJ.
Yeah, they were playing good, and they were like, okay, well, we can wait on this, and now y'all both lose games that mean something. I wouldn't say mean something, but they have this narrative to him now, and it's like now
Yep.
that he kind of has power to y'all now.